Welcome to this deep dive explainer. Today we're jumping right into the deeply emotional, honestly gut-wrenching story of Abstruck Painthing. This is one of those narratives that just fundamentally challenges how we look at the people closest to us. It's a profound exploration of silent sacrifices, the incredibly heavy cost of fear, and the devastating reality of only realizing what you have after it is gone forever. So we're going to unpack the intricate details of a tragedy that spans an entire lifetime, yet was hidden completely in plain sight.
Okay, let's just start with this devastating question because this really sets the stage for everything we're about to cover. What if the person meant for you, your literal soulmate, was standing right beside you your entire life, but you only found out when it was too late? I mean, think about that. This question is the beating heart of the story. It forces us to look at our own blind spots, right? How often do we look at someone every single day yet totally fail to see who they actually are? Elaine, our protagonist, lived this exact scenario, and the answer cost her a lifetime of what-ifs.
And I think this quote perfectly captures the core theme of our explainer today. We're looking at abstract art as a literal metaphor for the people right in front of us. This comes from Charles, a character who perfectly embodies that complex, chaotic vibe of an abstract painting. To Elaine, and honestly to everyone else, Charles was a complete mystery. He just didn't make sense at first glance. But as he points out here, just because something looks messy or unreadable doesn't mean it lacks meaning. You just have to be willing to look closer. Sometimes you actually have to feel it to understand it.
So let's trace this back and see how it all builds. Picture a 5-year-old girl in an orphanage, having lost her parents in a fire as a baby. She finds a little bit of peace in origami and painting, and actually makes her very first friend there. Fast forward to high school. She's been adopted, she's at a good university, and she meets Charles. Now, Charles is that quiet, intimidating guy who sits way in the back by the window. He totally ignores the class, just watches the trees, and is always writing in this mysterious notebook. Nobody talks to him. But in their second year, fate kind of steps in, and a teacher pairs the popular, artistic Elaine with the silent, stoic Charles for an art project.
Now, the way Charles first reveals his true self to her is incredibly unique. They meet up at this empty museum, and Charles points to a super complex abstract painting and just says, "That's me. Emotionless, unreadable, complicated." Later, when they're at his surprisingly massive, empty house, Elaine spots a duplicate of that exact same painting. But Charles doesn't just explain it to her. He takes her hand. He physically guides her fingers over the chaotic, uneven textures of the canvas. And by tracing those strokes, she feels the hidden letters literally spelling out his name, C-H-A-R-L. It's this intimate realization that you can't just look at him to know him. You have to feel what's beneath the surface. And that's the very first time he ever smiles at her.
But, as we know, timing in life can be incredibly cruel. In college, Elaine ends up meeting John, and John is literally the anti-Charles. He's loud, he's a popular sports star, and he pursues Elaine aggressively. She falls for his charisma, completely oblivious to the silent heartbreak Charles is going through. Charles actually tries to warn her that John is a womanizer with a sadistic streak, but she doesn't listen. She marries John, and that fairy tale turns into a nightmare so fast, John becomes violently abusive. And the contrast here is just tragic. While John uses his hands to hurt Elaine, Charles, the quiet observer, literally uses his own body as a human shield. He takes John's physical blows to protect her, walking away with these awful bruises that he absolutely refuses to explain.
The narrative pacing takes a massive, drastic shift right here. It all happens so incredibly fast. During a particularly violent episode, Charles steps in once again to save Elaine from her husband's rage. John is finally dealt with and sent to jail. It's supposed to be this moment of relief, right? Charles makes sure Elaine is safe, he turns around and starts walking across the street. And then, in a split second, out of nowhere, a truck hits him.
We really need to pause here and just let the clinical, jarring reality of that sink in. Dead on arrival. There's no miraculous hospital recovery, there's no long, heartfelt goodbye in a hospital bed. It's just the sudden, irreversible end of a life, before any medical help can even arrive. The sheer abruptness of this completely shatters Elaine's world. She goes straight from the trauma of her abusive marriage right into a paralyzing, entirely different kind of grief. And the most crucial, heartbreaking moment happens right here. As he's struggling for his final breaths, lying on the cold pavement holding Elaine's hand, Charles finally confesses. He says, "I loved you for a long time, even from afar, but I was scared." Fear. Fear was literally the only thing holding back his love this whole time. The tragedy isn't just that he died. It's that he lived his entire life utterly terrified to speak his truth. With his absolute last bit of strength, he gives her the key to his house, leaving her with this fragmented legacy and a heart just full of agonizing questions.
So about a month and a half goes by, Elaine is drowning in grief, and she decides to go back to that art museum they visited all those years ago. And she discovers something absolutely shocking. Charles didn't just visit this museum, he owned it. He had painted the hundreds of paintings filling the halls. At the guard's instruction, they lower the centerpiece of the entire museum. It's a secret, massive 5x5-foot painting of Elaine and Charles, perfectly capturing a happy moment from their high school days at a park.
But there's more. Attached to the back of that massive painting is the notebook. The small notebook Charles used to write in every single day in class, the one nobody was ever allowed to see. Elaine sits on his favorite bench, forcing her trembling hands to open it. And as we read his words exactly as she did, the hidden layers of his entire life begin to unravel. He wrote, "Dear Elaine, even if I'm not the one you love, I love you. I've admired you since the painting competition." He had planned from the very start just to be near her, perfectly happy just being her friend if that was all she'd allow.
Then comes a revelation that is it's absolutely heartbreaking. He writes, "I am sick with leukemia." He explains how he fought through the pain entirely for her. He actually got better, and he was finally ready to confess his feelings. But by the time he was well enough, she had already gotten back together with John. He was forced to watch the love of his life marry an abuser. And suddenly it dawns on Elaine. All those unexplained bruises he had over the years, they weren't just from shielding her from John. They were the silent, hidden markers of his fierce battle with leukemia, a battle he fought completely alone so she wouldn't worry.
As she flips to the end of the notebook, the ultimate tragic twist drops. The letter is signed, Love, Joshua. Charles was Joshua. He was her very first friend from the orphanage when she was just 5 years old, the little boy who taught her how to paint. He got adopted by a wealthy family, moved to America, and eventually came back to the Philippines for one reason, to find her. But when he finally did, he was already sick. He was too terrified that she'd push him away if she knew he was dying. He loved her from the very first moment of her life, and she was entirely blind to it.
Remember that key he handed her right before he died? Well, Elaine uses it now. She discovers that the massive painting in the museum isn't just a canvas, it's a hidden door. She unlocks it and uncovers a secret room. Inside is this hauntingly beautiful but heartbreaking shrine to a future that was stolen from them. There's a pristine white wedding dress, a traditional black and white barong for the groom, a white comb, a white mirror. Everything is perfectly prepared for a wedding that would never, ever happen. And sitting right in the center, on a table, is a small white box holding a single, stark block letter.
Just let the words of this devastating black letter speak for themselves. Is it beautiful? I wanted you to be my bride when I got married, but it's impossible because you're already married. As Elaine reads this, she's holding the notebook so tightly that the metal spring is literally digging deep into her hands. She's bleeding from her palms, but she doesn't even feel it. She's completely numb to the physical pain, totally overwhelmed by the agonizing realization of what she missed. She had this immense, unconditional love her entire life, just masked behind the quiet boy at the window.
50. That is the number that defines the rest of Elaine's existence. For the next 50 years, from 1962 until she passed away in 2012, Elaine never remarried. When John got out of prison, she never went back to him. Instead, she dedicated her entire life to honoring Joshua's memory. She ran his art museum, she taught other kids how to paint, she added to his gallery just like he asked in his notebook, and she visited his grave every single day. Her life became a half-century-long apology, whispering to his headstone that if there is a next life, for sure she will know to choose him from the very beginning. So wrapping up our explainer today, I want to leave you with this lingering thought. Abstruck Painthing is a total masterclass in emotional devastation, yeah? But it's also a really profound warning. Consider the heavy cost of unspoken feelings. Ask yourself what beautiful things might be hiding right in plain sight in your own world. Are there people in your life whose quiet actions speak volumes that you're just failing to read? Take a moment today to look really closely at the abstract canvas of your own life, because you definitely don't want to wait until you find a hidden notebook to realize the masterpiece was standing right beside you all along.